Hey everybody, I am back with a new movie review. This one isn't technically a Thanksgiving thing, uh, like the other ones that I was planning on doing reviews for. But I'm going to be covering two particular movies just in time for the Wicked movie to come out. And I'll be covering Oz, the Great and Powerful, and the Wizard of Oz film. Now, before I continue, please do me a huge favor. Follow me in the links in the description below. Check out my Patreon if you want to further support the channel. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think of the wonderful world of the Wizard of Oz. Um. Anyway, yeah. So this one was like a prequel in a sense. Well, at least the origin story, I should say, of the Wizard of Oz and how he came to the land of Oz, all the other stuff. And completely forgot it was directed by Sam Raimi. And of course, it's based on the storybook Oz, part of the collection of the Wizard of Oz storybooks. So it stars James Franco as Oz, Mila Kunis as Theodora, aka the Wicked Witch of the West. Rachel Weisz plays Evanora, the Wicked Witch of the East. Michelle Williams as Glinda, the Good Witch / Annie. Zach Braff as Finley, a winged monkey. Slash Braff. Slash Frank, Oscar's loyal assistant in Kansas. Bill Cobbs as the Master Tinker. Joey King as China Girl. And we got Tony Cox as Nuck. Now, I like this whole thing setup where we see that Oz is back in 1905. Oz at this point is pretty much like a con artist, where like kind of fake magician, fake illusionist type of guy who uses gizmos to fake, magic. And and he's also like a huge flirt. When his act, pretty much got, busted up because of, some hecklers, he is later on confronted by an ex-lover of his, played by, what's her name? Michelle Williams, Annie, who will be the future mother of Dorothy Gale. Now, I'm pretty sure it's mentioned in a book on what happened to Dorothy's parents, but do find it kind of interesting that Dorothy's mom, and of course, it's never been brought up, who knew this was going to be like a thing, but I find it kind of interesting that Dorothy will meet at some point in the future the guy who used to hook up with her mom back in the day. And of course, it's never addressed. Why would it be? For all intents and purposes, that was an old flame that couldn't go anywhere. But it shows that, this woman who still harbors feelings for Oz, but she is, her hand was asked, she was she didn't give an answer to the guy who proposed to her. But before she gives her answer, she wants to have like a one final talk with Oz, just to say her final goodbyes, essentially. Um, I mean, he's like a good sport about it. He knows, like, is he a good dude to use? Like, yeah, well, that's good. That's what you deserve, and everything like that. Shows that this dude got, despite his card on his ways, he has like a good heart. He's trying to, he has dreams and aspirations to do something grand, to make it big, essentially. But then one of the circus strongmen at this fair, was where they at, comes to try to find him because he's been flirting with his wife, because he keep presenting these girls with these like music boxes, trying to impress them. So as he's being chased through the fairgrounds, he hopped into one of the hot air balloons, and as it's taking off, it gets caught up in a tornado. Which, by the way, kudos to making it consistent with the original film, where it starts off in like a black and white setting, and the aspect ratio is like completely different from the widescreen once everything gets into color. I thought that was like a nice touch, way to stay consistent with the original tale. I love that aspect. Or at least I should say I love that choice. So when he lands in the land of Oz, he meets with Theodora, played by Mila Kunis. And once we I want to circle back around when it comes to Mila Kunis' performance, but they meet up. They have to run away from the one flying monkey, and I love the portrayal of the flying monkeys in here. We'll meet one that's a little bit more nicer, but these are more like baboons with wings, the scarier ones. And I love the depiction of these guys because, I remember. Okay, I don't want to say anything just yet, but like I said, it's, this and the whole Theodora thing, I gotta circle back around because I gotta make a point about something, but it hasn't happened yet, so give it a minute. So they escape from one of the flying monkeys and they head towards Emerald City, where Oz meets with Ivanora, who has obviously sinister plans. We're trying to deal with the supposed wicked witch. And I love this whole kind of like not almost like a tick, but a trigger word for Theodora whenever somebody like used the word wicked about her. And she shows got like kind of like fire capabilities because the Wicked Witch of the West flings fireballs. He's kind of like a fire witch in a sense. And it's like, I do not like it when somebody calls me that. It's like, because apparently she has a bit of a temper. So I like how it seated that. But there's like a prophecy that this great wizard will of the same name as the land will show up one day and put a stop to the Wicked Witch for good and rule Oz forever. He goes into the kingdom. He sees this like throne. Oh, it's not a throne room, but it's this Scrooge McDuck room filled with all this gold and everything like that. But he can't claim it until he actually kills the witch, which he was very hesitant on because he doesn't want to kill anybody. But knowing that he wants the gold, Ivanora is like kind of placates to that desire. It's like you gotta destroy her one in order to completely destroy her. So she has her suspicions about this guy. So he is tasked to go and find the witch. Oh, by the way, kind of skip over the part where they meet Theodora and Oz meet up with this more passive, cuter flying monkey. Finley, who saved him from this lion, which we'll know to be like the cowardly lion, because Oz just threw some kind of smoke pellet, and the lion kind of freaked out and ran away. I don't know how to feel about that. There's a little teases into what will become later down the road in the original film. I kind of wish. Well, I say I wish they would have done more, but at the same time, I'm thinking maybe it's like best to leave it brief. You don't need to hammer it home, because that's one of the things that kind of drives me crazy when it comes to origin stories or prequels to classic movies, where it's like you can't be over heavy handed with like these little Easter eggs and stuff like that. It's like, okay, keep it minimum. If they get it, they get it. So he comes across like an actual line though, and I don't know, maybe I wanted something more, because in the original movie it kind of looks like maybe I guess they more lean towards the book adaptation rather than what we will expect in the film, the original film. Because I'm thinking like, well, he doesn't look like a guy, a humanoid lion type of dude. But in the book, as it's illustrated, he is like a legit kind of lion. So I guess this film is kind of leaning into the whole book, the book's mythos rather than the original film, which makes sense given the fact that once we meet the Wicked Witch of the East, Ivanora, she's not wearing her ruby slippers. Matter of fact, you're not even addressing the silver slippers, because little do you know that the book represent the slippers as silver, not red. In the original film, they went with ruby slippers rather than silver because it looks better. Red looked better in the film rather than the silver ones. Yeah, it was kind of like a design choice. It worked all in all, but there's images of people changing the color to silver, and in my opinion, still would have worked, but I can see their point because the ruby does pop more. But we don't even see Wicked Witch of East wearing silver nor ruby. It just seems like just regular black heels. That's kind of like, because I know it's like the ruby slippers is kind of, under some type of rights. But you couldn't lean into like showing her wearing silver at the very least if you're more so doing the adaptation from the book source. That's something I kind of like had like a note of that. Shouldn't she be wearing some clear depiction of silver slippers? You don't need to super focus on them, but just, as we see her walking, we obviously see she wearing silver slippers, silver heels, something. Anyway, Oz confides in Finley that he's not really the wizard. He needs somebody to help him because he doesn't know the area, doesn't know what the heck's going on, so he needs some kind of inside man. In order to do that, he needs to confide in somebody. So Finley is the best one. Also, considering that he admits that he owes Oz a life debt, considering that he saved him from a lion, which nobody knew he was cowardly. So Oz and Finley go walk on the yellow brick road, and I'm also glad they kind of because I did watch right after this the original Wizard of Oz film, which I haven't seen since I was like a young kid. I haven't gotten back to it in so long. I'll give my overall thoughts on that once I get to it. But obviously is one of the most classic musicals ever. I'm glad Sam Raimi didn't really, lean into the whole musical aspect of this film. I'm not a musical guy. There are some films with musical elements that I enjoy, but just a straight up musical, I'm not much of a fan. I'm glad they didn't really go into these random song and dance numbers. They just played it kind of straight. So as they walk down the Yellow Brick Road, they come across a destroyed village where these kind of living China people, this China glass type of ceramic type of creatures, but they're kind of like humanoids, where they got completely destroyed by the Wicked Witch and her flying monkeys, and there's only one survivor, which is China girl, who shows with broken legs, which Oz, because he has all this stuff in his little bag, medical bag type of thing, like all these little magician type of tools and other craft stuff. He brought some super glue, and of course they don't know anything what glue is, which is kind of odd. You got legit craftsmen that work with tools to build stuff. You mean to tell me they don't have a particular adhesive? Maybe they have adhesive, but they don't call it glue where they're from. Maybe they probably call it something else, but it still operates in the same. Even if you call it something else, it'll operate under the same concept. So I don't know. It's just like there's a lot of things that they let Oz get away with certain things where they could just. I'm pretty sure you should be familiar with all this stuff. Because a lot of people here in Oz are so gullible, for the most part, unnecessarily. But it has to lean towards this way in order to make the original film that comes later still be consistent. I just kind of wish they kind of tweaked certain of the some of the script a little bit, in my opinion. But anyway, he fixed her up, and she started fake crying because she prefers to stick with him. So he agrees. So kind of like the original film, like Dorothy, along this little journey, he has to pick up some allies along the way. So now he has Finley, now he has the China girl. So they finally head towards this forest where it's very gloomy type of area. It's near the cemetery, where they do eventually meet up with Glinda, who for some reason, is wearing this dark cloak unnecessarily. He's trying to, I know, lean into like, oh, she could be a wicked witch because she's wearing all this dark robes and she in this kind of mysterious area. But I'm thinking, you're Glinda, who's always wearing bright colors, and you very kind of cheerful. But it's just kind of odd choice to wear something like that. I get it. You try and maybe be incognito and stuff like that, but I don't know. It just seems like, wow, you're. You know, I want to say you're insulting the audience intelligence, but it could have. It's kind of obvious where you're leaning towards. You could have done at least a couple of different ways to do what you intend, but without making it seem obvious. I don't know. There's certain choices that seems to be needing a little bit of a tweak. But she introduces herself, and turns out she wasn't the Wicked Witch. She's the daughter of the original King of Oz, but was killed by Ivanora, who was the real Wicked Witch. And because of her, because she is so wicked, she tricks Theodora into thinking like, oh, this dude's a scumbag. He might have promised you rule together alongside him, but look at him, he falls for another. He's a liar. So her heart is broken because she easily fell for him. But it's just like, she's a bit of a naive young girl. But I like the nice touch where when she starts crying, because we all know that the Wicked Witch's weakness is water. So she starts crying and starts, burning a bit of her face. So in order to remove this heartache, Ivanora offers her this green apple. And I'm thinking to myself, what is it with witches and apples? It's kind of weird. Maybe it has something to do with like biblical reference with like, Eve and the apple is always kind of synonymous for somebody's downfall. But it's just like, man, got the Snow White thing and now this. And it's like, man, this whole apple thing. I'm pretty sure there was some kind of apple in Hocus Pocus. I might be wrong about that. But man, it is like a thanks to Snow White, that seems like a staple with witches, at least for the most part. Not all the time, but when it pops up, it's like we know what you're referencing. So she takes a bite out of it, and then she goes through this Jekyll and Hyde transformation thing. And I still remember the trailer for this film where it has an end shot with her green hand with the long nails, comes up and, slams on the desk and leaving a scratch. And this is like a perfect time for me to mention. Mila Kunis is a great actress. She's been in stuff that we all have, enjoyed. And I didn't mind when she was casted for this role. But when you see her in her full form, it's like those weird in-between feelings you have where it's like, I don't hate this idea, but there's something that's like, some X factor that's missing to get it to the point where you want it to be like a breathtaking performance. But it's something, there's a step that was missed that was needed in order to make it like a banger of a performance. I don't hate it, but some people argue where it feels like it was like a miscast. I don't think it's a complete miscast. I actually think there was just something else, that Mila Kunis needed to do in order to make this like a good solid role. Because growing up, always hear from uh, older generations who seen the Wicked Witch growing up. They always thought she was the scariest thing they ever seen, and she honestly is ranked in, I think, the top 5 scariest movie villains of all time. And I never understood that until I eventually saw this film, where I was like, if this was played in like a different type of genre, I could see their point of this could be like a legit scary villain. It's like she's extremely creepy, and with that, the whole voice thing, uh, uh, just just the embodiment of rage almost. But it like I can see it, but I said not getting it. But I can see it what they're coming from now from this film. It's like, okay, if they tweaked some of the script a bit, and maybe the cinematography just like a little bit, it's just missing that extra step. It's like I could see like, okay, this is like a legit frightening character. And it's kind of the same way how people mention how Darth Vader, growing up in like the 80s, how he was a terrifying movie villain. And I never understood that until I saw Rogue One when I was like a little older. And when I saw that hallway scene, that's when it kind of clicked to me. And even in the Kenobi series, when, he's walking down that street and starts yanking fools out of their homes and snapping people's necks with the Force, while he's just strolling along the street trying to force Kenobi out out hiding, and I see him like slaughtering these rebels in the hallway, and it's like, oh my god, played it in a different context. Jedi could be like a slasher horror film, horror villains if they need to be. It just usually ain't played that way because it's a kind of like action adventure in a lot of ways, and it's sci-fi fantasy. But there's some horror aspects in Star Wars that you can easily tap into, especially when it comes to Sith. It's like, yeah, these guys are freaking scary. You don't want to be in the same room with these guys. So it's like it's got that same feel. It's like these guys are freaking scary. It's like, there's a reason. I was like, okay, I can see the point. Matter of fact, I just went to my father because he told me that when I was a young kid, how like he, like Darth Vader was always seemed like the scariest dude in the movies. Yeah, for the people he was growing up with. I never understood that until I saw Rogue One, and I had to go to him. I was like, yeah, I can see your point. This dude was freaking scary. Oh my god. He just, I never saw Darth Vader in that particular situation. Here in Oz Great and Powerful, I can see them leaning into that same feel. I'm pretty sure Sam Raimi grew up in that generation with that same mindset that the Wicked Witch is one of the scariest movie villains of all time for a reason. And he was tapping into that, but he didn't really go all the way that to really drive home that point, in my opinion. It wasn't a bad casting. Matter of fact, they also said James Franco was a bit of bad casting because he doesn't come across as like a sly con man, which I can see their point. And like Mila Kunis, like I don't think is, in my personal opinion, he's a bad casting. He just needed to tweak certain things just to get over that one little hump, just to drive it home. Because he seems like how James Franco is usually in certain films, where it's like that, good-looking heartthrob or stoner dude. It's like one of the two. But a lot of actors has to get outside their comfort zone, and I'm not gonna knock him. He's playing like a sly con man. He just needed like a an extra step just to really drive home that point. Anyway, as they make their way to Glinda's kingdom, because she's the Good Witch of the North, we never ever get to see who the Good Witch of the South would be. They never really explore that. It's in the book, I think, but it's just it never brought to a. Unless you're talking about Once Upon a Time, I'm not even sure. I never watched that show. I'm pretty sure they probably brought that up there, but by and large, most people have never seen what the Good Witch of the South is. But anyway, they go to Glinda's kingdom after escaping the flying monkeys, who's also very terrifying. So yeah, they very much lean into the terror of these flying creatures. But and you get the classic Glinda's bubbles and everything like that. And they go through the barrier to her kingdom. And you get to see all these quirky characters. But then Theodora shows up, breaks through the barrier, lands in like a fireball. This is kind of, not dissimilar to how in the original film she appears, but in that film it's like a puff of red smoke. Here they want to like really like take it the extra miles. Like, no, she lands like a meteor in the middle of the courtyard, and you see like just her silhouette in the flames, and it's like the camera shot is just like circles around. I kind of like that. That is probably like my favorite shot of the scene, where it just circles around the flames, and you just see her silhouette just leering, and you hear that cackling laughter. And when you see Theodora coming out of the flames, she doesn't even really need the broom in a sense, because matter of fact, she takes somebody else's broom and uses it, and it becomes her signature broom. But she just levitates, circles around, and gets in people's faces. That is a level of terror. It's like she just got a sheer intimidation factor. I really like this scene for that, because that's what I'm talking about. Like, Sam Raimi did a good job in really leaning into, this is like a terrifying villain for a reason for older generations, and I want to drive home that point for a new generation to see our point. That's how I'm taking this. So that's why I'm saying I cannot wholeheartedly say this was a terrible casting, because I think Mila Kunis did a good enough job with the material. That being said, kind of wish you would have, her and Sam Raimi would have gone just a little bit further, just to really drive home that point. But for what we got, I say it's pretty solid. So, of course, Oz and Glenda's kind of like astonished to what she is right now, and she's just bitter and angry and just wrathful, knowing she can't really do anything here, which is, don't see why, because clearly she has power. It's kind of like, almost like using the Force, but it's magic, where she, forcing Oz to dance like a puppet in midair and toss him around like a rag doll. You did all that. Why could you not just off him at this moment? It's kind of weird. It's the similar problem in the original film, where it's like they kind of answer that, where Glenda points out in the original film that the Wicked Witch doesn't have any power in Munchkin Land, which I guess that's her domain. But is that the same? Is it really the same thing? Because if she has no power in this particular area, I don't know if this is still considered Munchkin Land in this film. But if she has no power here, it being your kingdom, supposed to be under your protection, she shouldn't be able to move Oz around like a puppet. That's all I'm saying. But she kind of just takes off, saying that, this war is on. We're going to take, this area. We're going to annihilate you and destroy you, Glenda. And then Oz. Oz, then runs away. And of course, Glinda already knew that he, at least for a little while, that he wasn't really the, you know, uh, great and powerful wizard as prophesied, but it's the one that they have right now. And she still counts on him because she still sees some good in him that, and she can, she says to him, you can still motivate these people to fight back. And he thinks like, oh, it's kind of typical in these type of stories where it's like he sees these little villagers or just, craftsmen and all these other people. It's like, none of them are soldiers. Like, are you serious? It's like, how was it? What am I supposed to work with this? But after having a conversation later that night with the China girl, he talks to her about his personal hero, Thomas Edison, and how he takes a lot of his inspiration for what he does from him. But then that gives him an idea where he utilizes the skills of all these different people in order to plan out a strategic big time magic trick, essentially, in order to defeat these witches. So they learn about the whole poppy seeds because, they make people fall asleep. So he has a group of people to make these scarecrows and under these pulley systems to roll through the poppy seeds, which I thought was kind of dumb, where the witches send out their flying monkeys to attack them, which we get to see, what these creatures are capable of. Getting to see them really be gory, but to these scarecrow. And I was like, oh my God, it's like they're just butchering these things. So you can just see like why these things are so scary, because they can literally tear into a person. But how do they know they're sending their, I know it's like covered in fog, but you lived here. That direction is where the poppy seeds are. Why are you sending your best asset through there, knowing that it's in the same direction as the poppy seeds? That is kind of a poor decision making as a supposed leader. But majority of the flying monkeys are put to sleep. But two manages to capture Glinda the Good Witch and bring it to Emerald City so she can be publicly executed. Oz and the other allies sneak into Emerald City and instructs everybody else to, okay, stick to the plan. I gotta go, because he had one of the tinkerers make a hot air balloon so he can try to fly out of here. And he's also trying to, sneak in, get some of the gold along with it. Of course, Wicked Witch of West sees this, throws a fireball, and sends it crashing down, thinking like, oh, she destroyed our only savior. And of course, this is all a ruse. He tricks even his allies. He goes into one of the carriages that was, brought in, and does this big cloud puff of smoke with an illusion of his face, thanks to all the gizmos inside, tricking everybody to look like what we know Oz to look like in the original film. I am the great and powerful Oz. So now Ivanora is running scared, and Theodora is like, I ain't afraid of you, but none of her attacks are working because it's all smoke and mirrors. So she runs away to the west. China Girl helps Glinda escape. You see this witch battle between her and Ivanora, but Ivanora gets her necklace destroyed, which kept her youth and beauty. Now she's kind of like a old hag creature, and a couple of the flying monkeys takes her to the east. So the movie ends with, just like, to keep up with the theme, or at least the character of Oz, he gives people gifts, and symbolic gifts in a sense. He gives Nuck this little happy smile holder thing, because he's always like, always got like a sour puss. He calls him sour puss because he always kind of like, got a grumpy face going on. But it helps him put a smile on his face every time. Try not to be so serious. He gives Finley his hat and his friendship, because he always stuck by him this whole entire time. He gives the one of the head tinkerers one of his like pocket tool things, and then of course he doesn't even know. He doesn't even explain to the guy what it really is. Come on, it's like a pocket tool thing, it's a Swiss Army knife basically. But maybe that helps him build the Tin Man later. I don't know. But then he tells China Girl that even though he's not capable of bringing her family back to life, but he also mentions that you have like we can have us as family, all of us. And then of course him and Glinda, he shares the gift he has for her, for as like thanks for showing him like he's like more than just a con man. He showing him he can be greater than what he was. And then they end up making out in a sense, and I'm not too mad about that, because even though that's not really what we see in the original film, but why not have Oz and Glinda hook up? Matter of fact, why haven't they could have easily had like a kid, because it's still weird that there's really no solid acknowledgement. I say solid because it's like, oh, and you were there, and you were there, and you. I was like, no, express wholeheartedly that, man, Glinda, you kind of look like my ex-girlfriend back where I come from. It's kind of weird, kind of thing. It's like anybody who goes to Oz, people they meet up. There's a few people they end up meeting on their little journey somehow, some way, look or sound like people they knew back home. I don't think this. It's kind of an odd thing in that in the franchise of the Wizard of Oz. Anyway, they end up making out, and he's living in Oz as the ruler, but he is still keeping up the facade of him as this giant smoke entity now. But only Glinda, Finley, Head Tinkerer, Nuck, and China Girl is the only ones that know the real truth. But that's where pretty much the end of the film. Now, when this came out, not many people really cared about it, although it still made money at the box office, ironically, because it had like a budget of $215 million. Came out in 2013, mind you, and at the box office came out at $493.3 million. So it did something right. And I don't know what the reception was. Yeah, it was kind of like average. And, people, consider it like an average. It's not horrendous or anything. It's still, for the most part, stay faithful to, at the very least, the book, more so maybe the original film, but it still did a pretty good job. From what I'm understanding, there's still like a following for this film. I think a lot of people over time really thought this film was just like a very solid film, nothing to sneeze at. So yeah, I mean, throughout those slight criticisms I have for this film, I still say it's definitely deserving of the part of the world of Wizard of Oz. It's like a solid origin story of the wizard. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Have y'all seen this, recently? Because I don't know. Like, I also appreciate there wasn't no crazy song and dance numbers, but I had some, despite the appreciation and love and respect of the original Wizard of Oz, I had some choice words about that because I haven't seen that since I was a tiny kid, and I didn't notice it until I rewatched it the other day, and I was like, how come I never noticed that? That kind of feeling. But I'll say that for my review for that in a little bit. But please follow me in the links in the description below. Leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think of Oz the Great and Powerful. And I will see you all soon. Stay tuned for next week as I'll wrap up Thanksgiving or November movie month with 2 more movies to wrap everything up before I get into the December month for Christmas movie reviews. So anyway, take care. I'll see you all soon. Peace.